talking to me. Seeing as it is now 7 o'clock, let me call to order the Tuesday meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board.
Is your mic on, Paul?
Is it? Yeah, it is. Is that better? Oh, I got a dead mic?
I don't know.
I think I got it.
I heard something, yeah.
Let me check back.
Yeah. He's standing, but he isn't saying anything.
No.
Let's try that again to call to order the Merrimack Planning Board meeting for today, September 7th. Before we start, let me please make sure everybody remembers to turn on their mic when they are speaking and speak clearly into the microphone. The next planning board meeting for the town of Merrimack is currently scheduled for September 21st, 2021 at 7 o'clock here in the Matthew Thornton room.
Point Nelson.
Yep. Seeing as we are missing some people, Nelson, I'm going to appoint you to sit for Mr. Ankatel's spot for a full voting member. Tim, for the Planning and Zoning Administrator's report, what do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet, you'll find a memo dated August 26th regarding the regional impact determination for the Governor's Hill Corporation project that's on tonight's agenda. This is a project that is proposing to consolidate 13 lots of record and re-subdivide them into 5 lots in the Level Acre subdivision, which is an old subdivision from the 1970s. Staff recommends that the board determine this is not of regional impact as it does not meet the criteria.
What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we, that this subdivision does not have a regional impact.
Second.
Voted on by Mr. Disco, seconded by Ms. Healy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstaining? That's 4-0-0. Yeah, 4-0-0. In favor. Next up, Tim, we have the annual meeting for election of officers and review of the rules procedure. You did say you had some updates for us on that, Tim?
I do. Generally speaking, if you want, we typically open the floor for nominations for chair and vice chair. It could be a single motion or 2 separate motions, however the board determines they want to do it. And then once we get through that procedural step, I'll get into the proposed amendments to the rules of procedure.
Thank you, Tim. Do I have any nominations on the floor?
Mr. Chairman.
Nelson, please.
I would nominate yourself for the vice chairman and Bob Best for chairman of the planning board for the next year.
We have a nomination for myself as vice chair and Mr. Bob Best as chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Healy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against? And abstaining. 3-0-1. Tim, for your update on the
Thank
rules,
you.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a couple of minor modifications. A couple of them are just some language changes to be consistent with state law. And then secondly is a change to the date of the annual meeting of the board. As the board, anybody who's been on the board for any number of years realizes that the date of the annual meeting has varied from year to year just based on forgetting when the annual meeting is supposed to take place. And the fact that the zoning board has always had a different annual meeting date. So what we're proposing for both the planning board and the zoning board is that we hold the annual meeting at the first regular meeting in May every year so that it is a standing date for both boards that we can plug into our reminders and not forget to add it to the agenda each year. The other items deal primarily with RSA 91A. They're formerly in the rules of procedure were language regarding the maintenance of recording of meetings on audio cassette, which we no longer do. There is no audio cassette to preserve anymore because we utilize the technology that is available. All meetings are preserved indefinitely now online via the Merrimack TV YouTube channel and their website. So those sections have simply been amended to refer back to RSA 91A, which is the right to know law for the state. The other change is actually on page 2, section 5A, Roman numeral 1, which is just changing the word step down to recuse themselves to be consistent again with state law language. So that's it for the minor modifications, and assuming the board sees fit, if there is a vote here tonight unanimous, we can adopt them here tonight and move forward. If it is not unanimous, we need to go forward and have a second vote on it in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Let me just note that at 7:05, Ms. Christensen did join us for the meeting. Lynn, good to have you.
My apologies for being late.
No, absolutely no problem. Do we have any proposed changes or questions for Tim? Nelson, please.
Mr. Chairman, I've been through this, and I agree with the changes made. They're minor in nature, and they're consistent with state law, and I would move to adopt these changes to the
Rules of procedure.
rules and procedures. Thank you.
Very nice. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Lynn Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That's a 5-0-0 to adopt the rule changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now that that business is done, on to our item number 4, I believe it is. John Flatley Company, this is a continued review of a site plan to construct a 120,000 square foot warehouse and distribution building per the requirements of the Flatley mixed-use conditional use permit. The parcel is located at 707 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial District and Aquifer Conservation Area. Tax map 6E, lot 003-06, case planning board number 2021-24. This item is continued from the June 15th, 20th, August 17th planning board meetings.
Just to give a board a brief overview on where we are with this, the board was last presented this project back in July, was continued again in August without a presentation due to the lack of a quorum that night, being able to hear the project. Since the applicant was last before you, peer review has been completed on the project. There are a few minor issues. The applicant has submitted revised plans that we believe address the majority of those comments that have been received. And again, based on those remaining items, staff is comfortable making a recommendation of conditional approval here tonight.
Thank you, Tim. Will the applicant please introduce themselves and tell us what you have for us today?
Yes, my name is Nathan Chamberlain, Fieldstone Land Consultants.
Nathan, where do you get the mic?
Sure.
Bill, you're welcome to use it if you have a stick.
Right green. Messy desktop. Really messy desktop.
Guess so.
So as was stated to you here a couple months ago, this is referred to as a high bay site in the Merrimack Commerce Park, Flatley property. You see the Flatley property, they own several parcels out here. First one is the Gilbert Crossing, the apartments. And then we have 63-1, which is basically the field you see from the road, and it stretches back to the railroad tracks. And then
Excuse me, Mr. Chamberlain, just 1 second. Can you make sure your microphone is tapped on? There you go.
Bright green and have it close.
it's on now. Thank
There you go. Thank you very much.
63-1, which is the old fish hatchery, and then 63-4, which is the strange lot, it wraps around St. Cobain, and that's where the flex buildings were up in front, and in the back is part of the project we're going to be discussing later. 63-5 is where this project was originally approved back in 2012. Same size building, same layout essentially. And then we're now on 63-6. This is all part of the conditional use permit that was granted by the board for this land. And as I mentioned, this is the high bay that was originally approved in the back, and now we've got it on the side. So it's a 120,000 square foot building, 200 by 600. It's in a warehouse building, basically for distribution and warehousing. It's got some apartments in the front. Some parking in the front for offices that are in the front, and then, in the back we have a rear access road. I can flick to the sheet. It's just the overall site plan. It doesn't really reveal a lot because we have to fit all the notes that are required for the site plan on it. We should skip down the actual site plan here. It zooms in, and as I was saying, we have some parking in the front. But first of all, we have this access road here coming off the St. Gobain driveway that comes down and starts to loop around. This is the same access road that was approved for the original high bay down on 3-5. So we're building a portion of that coming down in. We have an access to the parking area for the office space, the people working in the office, and then we have a truck route that goes around to the back of the building for the delivery trucks. It's all been designed for WB 62 highway tractor trailers, and we have the required parking for the warehouse industrial use for over 100,000 square feet, which is slightly less. It's 1 per 1,500 square feet instead of 1 per 1,000, I believe, if you're under 100,000 square feet. We have the required interior landscaping, handicap spaces, have charging stations, and the bike rack. We will need a couple of waivers. We are requesting a couple of waivers for this application, one being the location of trees over 15 inches. That was granted on the previous one for the flex buildings. And the site was clear cut back in 2012 along this tree line and then down in here as well. And it's grown back up as saplings now. There are some mature trees out in the front, but we're working mainly in the back here. Moving on to the grading plan. You see this, there's kind of a ravine that goes through the site here that we're trying to bridge. So we're cutting on the high side. We're filling this kind of ravine that goes through here, and then we're filling on this low side as well. But we've tried to balance it out and also fit in with this proposed access road. So this upper drive kind of goes down, and then this one's fairly level and kind of goes up to the building. But it's sat in there fairly nice, I think. We got a little bit of fill back here. There is a wetland that is being fed from the highway runoff that comes down through here. And then we have a setback that we stayed out of. We do have closed drainage collecting in the back here and routing over to a large detention basin. And then we also have, the access road has open drainage. It comes down to a low point, and then it's collected in a cross culvert. And the same thing with this parking area. It's open drainage that comes down to a 4-bay and then over to the same detention basin. And then finally, we have a collector pipe along the front of the building for to collect the roof runoff and drainage leaders, and again, route it over to this detention basin. As you're probably all aware of, the PFOA pollution from St. Gobain. This all started when we initially tried to resurrect this high bay down in the other 6-5 lot. We were informed that we had to, we would not be permitted to do infiltration on the site, even though the existing site is all sand and is very accommodates infiltration. Unfortunately, we have to, we can't infiltrate. So what we're proposing is this would be a lined basin. Then, for the water quality storms. So, 90% of your pollutants come off in the smaller storms, or 90 they call it the first flush, the 1-inch storm. So that's your water quality volume. And so we're storing that and then metering it out slowly. And we have an outfall down here at the low point, and we have a treatment swale at that outfall. So we treat the runoff here at the outfall of the detention basin to provide the treatment. And then it goes over to, there's a large power transmission lines that go through here, and there's a cross culvert underneath the railroad tracks that goes to the river. So we have the treatment swale to this existing cross culvert and then to the river. So this was our observation point for the drainage analysis. The site, the entire site flows down to this area. So that was our observation point. And that was the same observation point on the previous approval as well. So we maintain the flows to this location. We've also, it's funny because when the high bay was proposed back here on 6-5, they had included flow for this area into their drainage system, and now we've reversed it and included flow from this 6-5 into this basin. That's one reason it's so big. So we have an additional like 10 acres over here flowing to this basin. So it's handling not only this runoff, but also the runoff to the south, I guess, of us. And that'll be discussed on the next project as well. As far as utilities, not quite as busy here. So we're basically showing our water tie-in. We're bringing water in from the highway, as well as our underground utilities, and gas. Gas is going to tie in here. There's a 8-inch line that comes down to service St. Cobain, so we're tying the gas in here. Bring everything down the access road and extend it for future extension over here, or cap it for future extension down here to the south. And that'll be carried over and looped back around into the same 12-inch main in Daniel Webster Highway. And then, we're providing several hydrants. There's one here, there's one here, and there's a couple in the back, meeting whatever requirements the fire department has for hydrants. We are bringing the water service to the back of the building because that's what they had on the previous design. I imagine the fire suppression room is in the back here. So we have a 10-inch main coming to the back for fire suppression, and then also domestic. And this is just erosion control plans, pre and post erosion control, and a lighting plan. So here, again, we're asking for a waiver for lighting because of the nature of this, where we are basically, part of our development is on this other lot, 6E5, 3-5, I'm sorry. So we are over the property line with these lights. And so we're asking a waiver for relief from the requirements. It's the same owner. We maintain it here along St. Cobain, so that was the waiver we're asking for as well. And those have been submitted in writing. As far as landscaping, fair amount of landscaping. We have a lot of street trees along the proposed access road. Then a lot of pines, white pines along the back, which planning has asked us to look at changing those out to spruce, which I don't believe we have a problem with. So we have red maples, red oaks, honey locusts, and some birch clusters as well, and then several various shrubs around the building and in these islands. And then the rest is just construction details. So that's pretty much an overview. I can answer any questions you might have. And we'd like to, obviously we're here for conditional approval, approval of the waivers. This has been reviewed, and we're just waiting for this conditional approval so we can finalize our state permits and submit those.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain, for that.
Sure.
Not to double back too quickly, but the drainage and the stormwater design that you just walked us over, that adheres to all the state regulations that we went through
Yes.
in the beginning of this project, correct?
Yep.
MS4 and all that.
Yeah, well, the MS4, it's not really discharged to the town system.
That's what I'm saying. So
Right.
you're still,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
town is maintaining our position on this, that the MS4 is not a concern with this particular
okay.
project.
I just wanted to get that
Yep.
straight right off the bat. Board members, before we get into deep, I think we should handle the question as to completeness. Is it? Oh, you're right. Yes, it was. Okay. Well, I guess it is complete then. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Ms. Christensen, please.
I'm seeing only one waiver request. With regard to the trees of 15 Diana. Is that correct?
There's also the illumination request as well.
I'm not seeing that on the memo.
In the memo? It's in the memo. It's
I think it's
313E32 regarding maximum illumination levels of property lines.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, so just we had submitted the tree waiver with the initial application, and then it was brought to our attention by staff that we needed one for the illumination. That was brought up the last time we were here, and so that was submitted subsequently.
I'm
Yeah.
okay, I missed that, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Anybody else? Ms. Haley, please.
Just to get back to the stormwater again, is that the new drainage plan that DES said they wanted
Yes.
in place? So is that where it's gonna go, or is that going to be for any drainage that occurs across the properties?
As far as the way it's handled?
Yeah.
Yes, so that's the way we're really limited on what we can do.
Yeah,
And so this is how we proceeded with all, and we're proposing dry basins with the treatment swale at the outfall.
okay. And where is the treatment swell draining into? The trees to the north?
There is a power line easement that goes through here, transmission line. There's
Yep.
one of the towers right there. And then at the toe, there's a culvert right here, so it's just right, it's draining right at the property line. It's gonna go, heading over to this cross culvert where it's currently draining to. So this, there's a highway drainage right here. I think it's right here, or it might be right here. It drains onto the property and it goes down through here and feeds this wetland. So we're basically picking that up in this swale and directing it away from us and and putting it back right where it's going currently into the wetland. But that all drains down to this cross culvert.
And a second question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
The Daniel Webster side, which would be the west side of the building, that's the road side. So what are people gonna see when they go by?
Well, so there's some vegetation's gonna stay up here. This tree line's pretty old, so I think it's more vegetated. I just went out there and this is pretty vegetated right now. But again, the building's set down quite a bit from the road. So it's set down a good 20 feet.
Okay. So you're just leaving the vegetation that's there? Is that the plan?
Well, yeah.
All the scrub pine and whatnot?
Yes. Yeah, we do have a clearing line here for a staging area, but all this will remain vegetated. And I think this has grown in since the survey was done.
If you look at the landscape plan, they've indicated some white pines closer to the building in that area. Our recommendation is to substitute spruce in those locations because they're better screening.
Right, so those will grow up, and they're sitting, halfway up the building now. So once they, reach maturity, they'll screen the building entirely. But
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Disco?
Yeah, a few things. First of all, in the memo from Casey Wolf, she refers to a peer review regarding the let me see here, on the okay, I guess it has to do, first of all, with the traffic. That there was a minor traffic study done for this particular site,
That's correct.
and that wasn't included here. It was peer-reviewed.
It was, the traffic impact, short traffic analysis was in the previous packet when this was originally submitted. I have a copy of it here if you need to see it again, but there has been no change or revision submitted to that since it was initially submitted back in June.
Okay, it would have been nice if they had included some reference so we could see it before the meetings, That and that's the traffic plan. The drainage you've taken care of, I think. And the notes versus the notes. There were some notes that I had. Oh, yeah, the general peer review results. We didn't get those in the package either, Tim.
Yes, and we never have included those in the packet because otherwise your packet would be about 60 pages long. I can certainly go through, we have the file here if you're interested in looking at it, but we've never included peer review comments in the packets.
Okay.
In the past, we have gotten them at request.
We have what?
Upon
Gotten them at a
request, we've-
request. The peer reviews.
We've done what with them?
We've gotten those peer comments when we requested them. So we would continue the meeting, and then we vote on it next time.
Just to give you an idea, the two comments that were made relative to traffic and peer review were that a no semi-truck sign be placed at the entrance to the office parking lots, so
Yeah.
the trucks don't go in
This
there.
first driveway.
And secondly, that the traffic analysis did not take into account the loop road, which is the second part of the application
Yeah.
that's secondary here tonight.
Yeah.
So that's a comment that carries through to the next project.
Okay. Speaking of the loop road is another plan we're gonna look at
That's the next
later.
item on the
Correct.
agenda.
And that loop road is going to be a private road? Is
Correct.
that- all of this is private road in here?
Yes.
Is that
Yes,
the intent?
that's correct.
DPW's on board with that
Yes,
notion?
that's been the plan ever since the CUP was proposed.
Yeah, but just wanna know if it's still there.
Still there.
And, let's see, the landscaping you've taken care of, so I think that, takes care of it, other than the traffic analysis. And you said that was,
Those were the only two comments peer review had, was the truck sign and the accounting for the loop road.
no
They
impact on,
agreed with and felt that everything was in compliance with the regulations otherwise,
in compliance with what?
with our regulations.
Yeah, well,
They still will need to get a permit from DOT, but that's separate from the approval here.
yeah,
And what DOT requires for traffic may be different than what our regulations require. I believe Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, but DOT typically doesn't go with our short analysis. They require additional information to be submitted as part of their permit process.
okay, it would be good to know that. Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Yep, Mr. Walker, please just introduce yourself so people know who you are.
Thank you. Kevin Walker from the John Flatley Company. We actually met with DOT out there today, and there's no permit for access for this site. They do want to just modify the previous permit that was issued for the St. Gobain entrance whenever that was done. So it's going to be a pretty quick process as opposed to the newer curb cuts, which I have info on that, but I don't know if we want to deal with that now or down the road.
It's not applicable this side.
Let's wait till the loop road, it's more,
Wait
I
till
guess,
the loop
applicable
road.
there.
Thank you.
agree.
Don't
Thank you.
muddy,
Yeah.
don't muddy.
Mr. Disco, do you have anything else?
I think I have nothing else on this subject right now, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions at this moment? And so we can either take on the waivers or we can open up the public hearing. Anybody have any preference?
Let's do the public.
hearing.
Yeah.
We're going to open up the public hearing for anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this topic. Please step forward. I am seeing no one, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Now we can deal with the waivers.
Time,
What's that?
time for opening and
We don't.
closing?
For purposes of the planning board.
We don't, no.
Okay.
We notice our public hearings all at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, makes it easy.
You're in the wrong meeting.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the specific waivers? One dealing with the overflow of the lights onto something that is already their property, and the other one is the tree circumference. Any questions? Yes. Don.
I just have one on this tree business. This has come up recently due to recent changes in state law.
Mhm.
And this lot has been.
Not state law, it's our regulations. When we amended the regulations in 2019, the requirement was added to the regulations for
We did this to
identifying those trees.
ourselves.
We
I
did this
see.
ourselves, yes. This was intentional.
Okay. Because this lot has been cleared, basically clear cut, and there's no trees There's no trees over 15 inches, is that not?
Well, for the bulk of the property, but there are some up front, closer to the road.
Yeah,
There are.
so you have identified some.
Well, we haven't
You-
physically located them and put them on the plan.
Yeah. The requirement from the regulations is to physically locate them, identify them individually on the plan as part of the existing conditions survey. So if they're not done in that manner, that's why the waiver is requested here in this. We understand that there are, but they're not specifically identified on the plan, per the requirement of the regulations.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we're gonna be going through this a lot, I think.
On larger sites, I would agree.
Yeah, it's more applicable to like maybe a subdivision or something where you could work around the trees, but really, I mean, we're not gonna save the trees here.
I understand that. And I just didn't wanna be wavering every site plan we see from now on for trees that aren't there.
Right.
In this case, you say there are some there that you want the waiver for.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll say
Okay,
nothing.
that's my question, thank you.
That's fine. Anybody else? Do we want to go through these one at a time, or do we want to handle them together?
Together.
Separately? Does anybody have a motion?
Go ahead, Barbara. Go for it.
You want me to do that?
Oh, it was your idea.
So, let's see, motion to grant the waiver for the lights, and I can't find the exact wording for that.
That is section 3.13.E.3. Roman numeral 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
The two criteria, strict conformity or specific circumstances?
Specific circumstances. Is that a good one?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Ms. Healy, seconded by Mr. Disco. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? All abstaining, that's 500 to waive that. Do we have another motion regarding the last remaining waiver?
I'll move the lighting, that we grant a waiver to our lighting requirements.
Well, the trees.
What?
It's
That's the one I did.
Oh,
You got the trees.
oh,
Yeah.
the trees, okay. That we waived the requirement to identify the trees.
Regarding strict conformity or?
Strict conformity.
I'll
Yeah.
second.
Motion made by Mr. Disco, seconded by Ms. Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Pose.
All abstaining? That's 320 to pass that waiver. Okay. So, public hearing is done, waivers are passed. Do we have any other questions before we move on? Do I hear a motion then? Nobody. So then, further questions, I guess. Or a continuance, I guess, something.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the plan as submitted with the waivers noted and,
Proposed conditions per
Staff
and
memo.
the conditions specified in the memo of September the 2nd from Casey Wolf to Robert Best, with all the conditions specified therein.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Disco, seconded by Ms. Christensen to grant final conditional approval. All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That's 500 to grant final conditional approval.
Thank you.
Okay, so now on to item number 5 on the agenda. That is also John Flatley Company. This is a continued review of a site. Oh, I'm sorry. Continued review of a site plan to construct an internal access road per the requirements of the Flatley mixed-use conditional use permit. The parcels are located at 645, 673, 685, and 703 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial District and Aquifer Conservation Area. Tax map 6E, lots 003-01, 003-03-05, case planning board number 2021-29. This item is continued from the July 20th and August 17th meetings. Mr. Chamberlain?
Yes.
If you wish to proceed.
Thank you. So as we discussed earlier, this is the loop road that has been in the works for quite some time as part of the conditional use permit. The conditional use permit did include the land in back here, but this does, the conditional use permit is basically up front. And so of the conditional use permit, we'll have this area still to do, and then there was a commercial component over in this section. But as far as what we're here to discuss tonight is a loop road that comes over here by the fish hatchery and then down, loops around behind St. Gobain, and then back up just past where we were just looking at the high bay site and onto St. Gobain's driveway and the signal over here. So this would be a new curb cut, and then the signal would obviously be an upgrade to the state, amend the existing permit and, you know, tweak the signal timing if necessary. So as mentioned, this includes several parcels, 6E3-1, 6E3-3, 6E3-4, 6E3-5, and it abuts 6E3-6, which we were just looking at. So really, it's just a road through these parcels and with some drainage design done in contemplation of future development. So this is so we could put the road in and then market the land adjacent to it, essentially. We've kind of broken up these pods, the hatched areas of, you know, kind of marketable areas as the loop road goes through. Just kind of an overview. We've got several detention basins proposed as part of this, the biggest one being back here. There's a break in the slope right through here, and so we really can't do much down in this area because it falls off. And then this basin that we were just looking at is part of it as well, because as I mentioned, you know, the dividing line is in here somewhere that goes to that basin. The rest of it goes over to this basin, and then there's a couple of smaller ones up here, and some of it is going to the basin that was approved in the flex buildings, which we're modifying for this. So really, it's just the road and the utilities and the drainage that we're talking about here. This is just some existing conditions plans. And I was not able to fit the entire plan set on this zip drive that I have, so I just picked up the main sheets. So we start off, we have several grading plans. Here's the entrance, I guess the southerly entrance onto Daniel Webster Highway. There'll be a median, it comes in. We threw out a driveway to, this is the part of the conditional use permit, the commercial area. So there's several stores or pads that were proposed that are shown in the conditional use permit over this land, which we're not talking about. It's not part of this project. And then we come, so the existing fish hatchery is all gonna get demolished. It's actually still standing up there, which I was surprised to see. This is like a lawn area that's part of the fish hatchery now. So we have the two ponds from the fish hatchery. And then it goes, there's a riser here and it goes underground, and there, down in here, it's hard to see. There's like a concrete structure that they use to sort them, and then it would dump it into Dumpling Brook. So the road's kind of traversing that green lawn area that's there now. There's an existing paved road that loops through here from St. Gobain over to the fish hatchery, and then there's a driveway out here onto on Daniel Webster Highway. The existing road would come out, and our proposed road goes in. There's like a little, because the road's elevated through here, there's like a little catchment area here that drains into another basin here in this area. This is all created basically from the road, and then we have a berm here with an outfall over to a treatment swale over here into Dumpling Brook. And this is the large basin that I mentioned that was approved for the flex buildings. And so we're enlarging it slightly and adding a forebay on this end for the road runoff that's coming into it. So we're capturing, there's a high point about in the middle of the road that's coming down this way, and that's going here, and then we pick it up again here, and it goes into this basin. So this is kind of a forebay area. And we also have a swale here to direct the runoff over to here from this pad. So that's the first grading sheet. We come into the second grading sheet. We're coming around the corner. Again, the high point, the road is right in here. So this is all pitching down, and we're extending it over to the high bay, the flex building detention basin there. And the rest of this, so the road's kind of elevated in this section, and it will be curved, but the rest of the pad, say, that's over here is gonna sheet flow towards the back. And then this is basically the same corner we're looking at, but this is what would be developed in the future. We have a big collection swale that runs around on both sides to this long, narrow detention basin. And again, all these pads, once something is proposed, will have to come in for site plan approval. So this is kind of a placeholder. We use essentially 75% impervious for these. This basin currently is over-designed. It's got quite a bit extra capacity. But it's basically we just fit it in with the topography. And then, again, we have the treatment swale, the outfall, and it kind of goes down towards, and then there's a level spreader down here at the toe. So it comes down this riprap swale, level spreader into the Dumpling Brook. So we were just at the high point. There's the high point, then we have a low point. It basically goes up and goes down and goes back up again and back down again. It's pretty flat out there, so to get it to work, for 1% minimum grade. So again, the road is got a low point in the road, and basically above, there's a couple of knobs here that we're cutting through, so we got a little bit of cut, a little bit of fill, but then again, we have the road runoff dumps into a swale, and this will be a dividing line between the development pads, and it gets over that detention basin we were just talking about. So again, right here, this is all being routed. We have another swale being routed to that detention basin. The other thing going on here is currently St. Gobain's has drainage, a big drainage run. It's actually a fairly sizable pipe that comes down and then goes down to the river and under the train tracks here and to the river. So we're gonna actually, part of this project is reroute these so they don't, crisscross across the development area of the parcel. So that's what this line here is being rerouted along the property line between St. Gobain and Flatley. And Flatley's been in discussion with St. Gobain, they know this is happening. On the previous development, we weren't doing the drains, but we were doing the sewer, because there's sewer in here too that we're rerouting as well. So this is the north end of the project. This is the drainage line that's being routed out of the way, and then the sewer line falls alongside of it. And the sewer line is actually going to go this way, because there's a manhole over here that we're tying into. And again,
Where does the drainage go? It's being rerouted.
so it goes back to the existing 42-inch.
Oh,
So we're just taking the
Yeah.
42-inch.
Uh-huh,
It's
okay.
unfortunate, it's right on the seam of the page here.
Yeah.
Currently, a 42-inch goes through this easement and then down here
Mm-hmm,
to the river. So we're coming around and tying back into the 42-inch right here.
okay. You're going around up,
Right, we're going,
up and over, okay.
right, up and
Going to
over.
take it from cutting through the middle of the future development area.
Understand.
Right, so we don't want a
Yeah.
drain pipe where we want to put a building, basically. And we don't want to be limited to having to make the building fit the drain pipe. And here's the sewer right here, so they actually have a couple of sewer lines coming in and then down and out. When the high bay was down here, this was getting rerouted, and now we're doing the same thing. So we're picking this up, we're coming this way with it, down, but instead of going back that way, we're going this way because we have a sewer stub over here that's already in place in this manhole. So we're just tying in there instead.
Just to make it clear once again, all that falls in line with your dealings with town and state DES dealing with the drainage from the site.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So again, this will have to go through we will require AOT approval, and they'll, the town's looking at the drainage on their end, and AOT will look at it on their end as well. And then again, once we have a building that's proposed and we need a site plan, it'll get looked at again. So, this is just kind of master planning the property, trying to get access through here. So that's about it. There's a lot more sheets in the plan set. I can go over them on the board if you want to see them.
I think
The
if
remainder
any
of the
other-
sheets are planner profiles.
If any other members have questions, you can cite them as needed.
Sure.
Mr. Walker, come forward and just introduce yourself one more time, since it's a different item.
Again, Kevin Walker from the John Flatley Company. Just to give a little history on the St. Cobain drainage and sewer lines. They were always on course to replace that sewer line and the drainage line. Either line it or reroute it. And obviously where we needed to relocate those easements, we were speaking with St. Cobain and DES. And we actually got a call from St. Cobain a few months ago anyway, saying that DES was kind of on them to get this done. So I spoke with DES personally and said, we're going to make this part of our project. We're going to reroute their line around. And they'll fill that line. They'll cap both ends after it's filled, the whole 9 yards. Those pipes are, some of them are 15 to 18 feet deep. They're not 5-6 feet down. So those will be filled, those will be capped. And St. Cobain will do the work on their drain line and the sewer line. And we will obviously be doing the rest of it, the roadway, our drain lines, all that stuff. And as Nate said, they estimated a curve number for the runoff for these empty pads, saying they're 75% impervious, which is probably a little bit higher than what typically is, but better be safe than sorry. So the basin should be up, be fine once we go in for site plan approval. Whenever something comes up, we're basically just going to show the pads with
Right.
the drain calcs have already been submitted, just to back it up. We'll go from there. I just want to give you a little history on how discussions with DES and St. Cobain as far as the drain line and the sewer line go. And I guess now is as good a time as any just to talk about DOT with that other access. So again, we met with Rich Woodwanski from District 5 today. And I talked to him about, how are things going up there versus your requirements here with getting the DOT permit before starting work. And then we're kind of stuck in the middle because we've submitted stuff to them late June, early July, and we're still like 7th on their list. We
Mr.
were.
Walker, I can hardly see, could you speak up a
Oh,
little
sure.
bit more?
Yeah. Is that a little better?
A little bit.
I'm on here.
Light on?
It's on.
on.
It's on.
Okay.
I'll just be louder. How's
Yeah.
that?
That helps.
So we're kind of like in a tough spot with DOT being backed up. They had somebody quit. They had somebody go on maternity leave. They're short people. And the requirements of this board having a DOT permit. So in speaking with DOT, they said that, one, they've confirmed that, yes, we can get the 4 accesses, which we pretty much already knew from years ago when we did this. They've got some new people on board. They wanted to confirm that. They've confirmed that. He also said that we could apply for a construction permit, which will allow us to put in a gravel access off of DW Highway to access the site and do whatever we need to construction-wise. So this is a question more for the board than it is anything else. If the board is okay with DOT granting construction permit, which is just a temporary entrance at this point, to allow us to start construction, knowing that a permit is coming behind it from DOT, the full permit is coming from DOT behind it, is that something the board would entertain? We didn't expect DOT to take 6 months. I'm not blaming DOT. If they're shorthanded, they're shorthanded. But it's kind of put us behind the 8 ball a little
Yep.
bit.
No, understandable. I
So
see
just
Tim.
wanted to toss that out to the
The
board for
only way that could
consideration.
happen is if we reopen the public hearing for the flex site and go through a process of a waiver. It's not something that
The
board
entire
can-
flex site.
You have to open up the
This
public
is more
hearing.
for
on
the
that.
flex site.
Well,
Yeah.
would it be a waiver, Tim? if you
Yes,
got a
because our
construction permit?
regulations require all permits in hand before.
All permits in hand, okay.
Before plans are signed.
So, I don't know.
I don't know if you would think that's beneficial to you, if
And-
that's the route you want to go, if that's where we
It's-
want to go.
It's going to be very difficult to get a recommendation out of staff to do so.
Yeah. And that's staff saying that, so. What do you think, Mr. Walker? Would you like to try to walk down that path?
We can certainly sit down and discuss with Public Works and my staff, but.
Yeah, I suggest you try to sit down with staff first before
All
we
right, that's
make
what
any.
we'll do. But just, again, I met with them this afternoon, figured I'd let everybody in on
No,
the
that's
meeting. and,
understandable. I appreciate
We'll
it.
set something up with staff and DPW.
It's,
We'll go
it's
from there.
not only regulatory requirement, but it's also, the state law was changed several years ago that planning boards can no longer require permits in hand for acceptance of projects. But it's pretty explicit in state law that you are supposed to have all your permits in hand before final approvals are granted.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. So looking, this has already been decided as complete back in July. We do have that one waiver sitting on. Once again, Nelson, regarding your 15-inch trees on
Yeah.
site, they're asking for that to be waived as well. Before we get into that, does anybody have any questions? Ms. Healy, please.
Right, so the entrance that is not the main entrance, what I'm calling the St. Gobain main entrance, the one that you have, the curb cut further south on the road,
So the south
that is,
entrance?
that remains to be an in only and not an in and out for traffic?
No, that's full access.
That's not what we agreed to.
That's,
That, what we were told was that whether it was going to be an in only, because directly across the street, you have a housing
That's
complex.
the driveway for the flex site. We're not talking about the driveway
Yeah.
for the flex site. This is the other end of this
This is
proposed
another
new access
entrance
road.
to the
So it'll be
property.
much further south from the driveway.
Okay, so it's further, now I'm not
It's, I
seeing where
believe,
it is.
it's
So
pretty
the
close to the
flex
depot,
entrance-
is it across from the farm stand, Kevin?
That's the
yeah,
one I'm
it's across
talking
from the
about.
stand.
That's the one I'm talking about. Because it's the depot, Farm Depot, the pool and spa, and then it's the complex. It's Gilbert Cross, I'm not Gilbert Crossing, whatever.
Burn Road, which is directly across
Right.
from the flex site, which was previously discussed. This particular location was not discussed as part of any site plan to this,
So
to this
again,
point.
can you point to it where it is?
It's right here.
So that's across from Shelburne.
No.
No.
Shelburne,
Shelburne's
Shelburne is where the cursor is right now.
labeled right here, Shelburne Road. This is
Oh, okay,
Webster
okay.
Green access.
So that is closer.
That's the flex site that
That's
was
Shelburne.
conditionally approved.
Right, okay,
And that's
then-
the one we have before DOT for the permit currently.
right. Okay,
Then if you go to the south,
And then we're
Yep, it's
talking
even
about right here
further.
for the
Yeah.
loop road.
okay.
that's where the access road is proposed to exit.
And that's like to the south of the fish
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
hatchery?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, I think that gravel road comes out right in here.
It comes across from the depot, the present gravel road.
The one that's on the Flatley property, there's a gravel road that goes from the Gilbert Crossing along the
Yep.
frontage. and
Yep,
I think
over
There's a
there.
gate over here or
Goes a
something.
little further,
I don't believe it's directly across the street from the depot.
just barely,
Just a little, yeah.
just barely. And my other question is, you've got all the drainage in the swells and all of that going on down to the south of the property, down by where the Boston and Maine Railroad is.
Yes.
Do they know that you're gonna put all that drainage in there?
Well, we
Is it
may-
an issue that it may erode their tracks? Because they use those tracks.
Well, sure, no, we're maintaining the flow from the site,
Mm-hmm.
from the pre and the post, but we're bringing it down just above, we're actually going back onto Flatley's property right here, and there's a big box culvert here.
Okay.
So this is the other observation point, basically, we have this one, and we have the one over here we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
So we're maintaining the flow to here and here. There's some smaller ones in here that we really,
If
No.
anything, you're probably reducing flows too.
yeah, we'll probably reduce the flows too. yeah.
Okay.
Uh, Ultimately, those two analysis points, they have to be, and they are the same or less flow that is existing today will be post-development.
Okay. And getting back to that drainage that you're moving, the pipes that you're moving,
Sure.
that's a wastewater pipe coming from St. Gobain?
Stormwater and wastewater.
Okay, and have you talked to anyone in wastewater here in town?
Well, I have not specifically, no.
You might want to. Only because some of their wastewater is monitored coming out of St. Gobain.
Okay,
So they would want to know that that's being diluted.
okay. So that's good to
Good
know.
point.
We do have to file for NHCS wastewater permit, which goes to the town. So they look at it. at that time.
Wastewater hasn't submitted comments yet to this project, but
Okay.
they do have it.
Yeah, as long as Sarita knows, because they need to account for that, and the fact that you are sending, other wastewater in there as well.
Right.
Thank you.
And then as far as, what actually gets built here, that's gonna get reviewed during the building permit process, of what actually they're discharging.
That's another discussion.
The only thing I wanted to mention, since I didn't get a shot to do my pre-hearing spiel, this access road services both parts that are in the conditional use permit and parts that are not. So the area in between St. Cobain and the river, essentially, is not part of the conditional use permit. That is just a straight industrially zoned area. So there will be different standards applied when those lots come forward than there will be for the lots that were part of the conditional use permit.
Yep.
Is that all, Ms. Healy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Disco?
Any consideration for pedestrian access through this road, I've forgotten how the overall picture looks. We had at one time a pedestrian
I
way
believe
that came through part of this.
I believe, Nelson, that there is, as part of that commercial site that is yet to be developed, and then moving into the flex site, was an off-road paved pedestrian way that goes through that property along DW, but does not necessarily go into the higher traffic areas of the industrial uses that are proposed in that area.
Okay, so there is that link.
There is a linear out of the right-of-way paved pedestrian way that is part of the CUP
Yeah.
that will continue from Gilbert Crossing to the north.
Right, so we had Gilbert Crossing had a walkway that comes through here, obviously it's gonna have to get adjusted for when this commercial development goes forward. And then we carried that across the front of the flex site to this intersection here, and then once this pad goes in, we'll carry it across the front
Yes.
to the limit of the property.
So ultimately, when we have full build-out, there will be pedestrian facilities paralleling DW Highway along the entire frontage.
Okay, but I'm just remembering that there was one more to the south, more to the west, rather, of the fish hatchery. It was a crossing, and we talked about the problem with crossing the brook,
You're right.
and that was on one of maybe the CUP application.
I think the CUP understood that that was going to be an issue that was going to have to be resolved in some fashion when that site came forward for a formal site plan. But the intent and the requirement of the CUP is still to have that connection paralleling DW the entire length.
Okay, I thought it was further down, but maybe, no. So there's no,
There won't be any sidewalk adjacent to DW Highway. It will be off,
yeah,
separated from.
yeah. And there won't be anything behind St. Cobain.
No,
No.
Is that what I understand? Is that how?
that was never part of the CUP. It was always intended to
It
be,
was
to
always
get the
above
frontage
it.
along,
I think
get it
always
along
was
DW.
above it, yeah, okay. Okay, I didn't have a good memory of what happened to that.
Yeah, it's fine.
It doesn't seem to appear anymore.
It's been a few years.
That's
And,
been since 14.
but this road will accommodate it, I presume.
Yes.
Will that be it, Nelson?
Yeah, I guess that'll do it for now.
Okay, before we get into the waiver, I'd like to, if there are no other questions at this moment, anybody? I'd like to open up the public hearing. Anybody, any member of the public that has anything to say regarding this, please step forward. Not? Nope. You go, please introduce yourself, name, tell us what you have.
Richard Foote, 129 Indian Rock Road, Merrimack, obviously. My question is the fish hatchery, I guess that is, that little pond and that little, I guess it's a brook right there. What's the scoop on that? Is that gonna be left alone? Is it gonna be kind of built right up to it, or does it get a little space around it?
I believe the applicant, so, do you have any other questions? We'll then let the applicant take over from there.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, the ponds will stay as they are, and we're maintaining the town's requirements for a setback to it. Everywhere, we're not encroaching it.
Okay.
But the structures themselves are coming down.
The buildings, yes. But the dam that's there now and the riser pipe that controls the flow through there are staying the same.
Okay. Any other member of the public? Seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Board members, we can now move on to the waiver. If I hear a motion regarding that,
Which waiver is this for?
it's the same, yeah, the
15-inch
15-inch
trees, yeah.
trees.
I'll also move the waiver because let me find the criteria.
Strict conformity.
Conformance.
Yep,
There you go. Do I hear a second?
second.
Motion made by Ms. Christensen, seconded by Ms. Healy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No pros.
Opposed, 1. So that's 4-1-0 to pass that waiver. Okay. If any other member has any other questions regarding this, if not, we can move on to recommendations, possibly either continuance or conditional final approval.
Nothing else right now. Did we have Foster and O'Neill comments on this?
They have been submitted, and similar to the previous project, there's nothing of any significance, minor cleanup items, but otherwise, they are, in general, there's no major issues associated with the submission at this stage that would prevent us from recommending conditional approval.
Okay, the memo says that it's not been done yet.
You're looking at the previous memo. The current memo says that
September 1st is the memo
Yep.
I'm looking at.
the first, at the meeting in July, they had been not completed. Since then, comments have been received with no major impediments. Second sentence after the first one. In July, we didn't have peer review comments, which was why we asked you to continue it. We have peer review comments now. We believe that we can recommend final approval at this point.
Okay, in the present memo, September 1st.
Yep. The first
Item-
meeting was held on July 20th, and at that time, the board opted to continue the public hearing because peer review had not yet been completed. Since that time, comments have been received with no major impediments to approval noted.
Okay, going back to, if we could, the memo of September the 1st,
Yep, that's what I'm reading.
page 2, recommendation, item 4, the applicant shall address the following comments from the
Yes.
town's peer review.
That is a boilerplate condition on every approval you guys have granted in the 10 years I've been here.
Yeah?
Yeah, there are comments from peer review that they will need to address as part of this approval.
And if they've already done it, doesn't matter.
But where does it say they've done it? I guess I missed that.
In the background on first page of the memo,
Yeah,
right under where it says, see my July 15 memo.
yeah,
The first meeting was held on July 20th.
Yeah.
We opted to continue because peer review
Yeah.
had not been completed.
right.
Since then, comments have been received with no major impediments to approval noted. So peer review comments were received, I'll tell you exactly what.
Okay, I see it here.
See it?
All right, forget it. Okay,
Are you all set, Nelson?
yeah,
Ms. Christensen, you got a question?
No, I'm gonna make a motion that we grant final conditional approval to the application with the following precedent conditions to be fulfilled within 6 months and prior to signing unless otherwise specified based on the recommendations of the lighting department.
Staff memo. Motion made by Ms. Christensen. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Healy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. That's 5-0-0 to grant final conditional approval. Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain.
Thank you.
That deals with item 5 on the agenda. On to item 6. TC Boston Development Incorporated is the applicant, and Reichel Company Incorporated is the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of a site plan to construct a 323,750 square foot warehouse and distribution facility and associated site improvements. This parcel is located at 50 Robert Milligan Parkway in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts. Tax map 2D, lot 078, case Planning Board 2021-32. This item is continued from the August 17th Planning Board meeting. Before we hear from the applicant, Tim, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board may recall, this was last before us 3 weeks ago at the August 17th meeting. Generally, when a project and an economic development priority parcel comes before me, I usually push pretty hard to get it approved as quickly as possible. We did not have peer review at that point, but in the attempt and effort to try to maintain and push this project as an economic development priority, we recommended that it only be continued to the next meeting rather than the typical month. In the time in between then and now, we have received peer review comments. They are relatively manageable and minor in nature, mostly planned cleanup items and identification of some additional waivers, which which Bowler has submitted. You see an email from Casey that was aside your packets when you arrived this evening with the additional waivers that are being requested based on staff and peer review. They have not yet revised plans. However, I believe that Austin can tell you that they feel very comfortable that those peer review and staff comments can be managed, and they feel comfortable moving forward with those tonight.
You
So
call
at
me
this
Mr.
point,
Bowler.
we would recommend conditional approval when we get to that stage later.
Can I go by Mr. Bowler instead? No, it's okay. I would own the company that way.
Thank you, Tim. The applicant would please introduce himself and then tell us what you have for us tonight.
Absolutely. Okay. For the record, Austin Turner with Bowler, and joined this evening by Elisha Long from Trammell Crow, who's representing the applicant tonight. So as you recall, we had a pretty lengthy discussion at our last meeting in August, and perhaps I was even a little bit overly enthusiastic about the drainage design. I got pretty deep in there. I think we covered a lot of ground. Subsequent to our last discussion, we have received the peer review. We have received kind of the formal staff review, which is updated based on that memo. As Tim noted, there is nothing in that memo, though it was very thorough and thoughtful. There's nothing in there that we see as prohibitive. So we're actively working through those items right now. What did come from the updated staff memorandum as well as the peer review, a couple of other suggested waivers that we were requesting. We were coordinating with staff earlier this afternoon just to make sure we were aligned on approach, and we've submitted those in writing that may be in the board's package, which I'd be happy to go through those with you. We're in the process now of kind of amending the plans to reflect the peer review. I personally don't think anything's going to fundamentally change what you're looking at on the screen, how the program works. It's very, very technical in nature. So I'd be happy to get into any specifics you'd like me to. We covered a lot of ground at the last hearing, but I'd be happy to dust that off and go through whatever the board felt appropriate.
I know you weren't here, Paul, so I don't know if you needed a brief overview as to.
You don't have to go into high amounts of detail, but
Okay, certainly.
you'd like to
Yeah, I
give
was
me a
going to give you
summary
the
of
whole
it.
drainage design again because it was,
25 words or less.
name that tune. All right. So what we're proposing is a 324,000 square foot kind of warehouse distribution building. No specific tenant right now. It could be multiple tenants at the end of the day, but all very similar use. So it includes the requisite parking, which you'll see here, and I'm getting used to running an Apple computer here. This is Effie Everett on the bottom of the screen, which runs along the west side of the property. North is left, south is right. So we're kind of back. This is the Audley piece. If people are familiar, it's a gravel pit that you can see as you're going northbound. You can see the kind of the big ledge wall in the background. What we're doing, the site's roughly 40 acres, give or take. We're using the portions of the property which have historically been used in support of the gravel operation. We were very careful to design this, so we're not really clearing anything. It's just kind of that open, flat area that is formerly the gravel pit, including the old access road or existing access road, that paved driveway that comes in. We're utilizing that as well. So very cognizant of kind of the perimeter of the project. Bowers Pond is located on a portion of the property. Access drive comes up Robert Milligan, which is this end of the cul-de-sac here. This driveway that comes in here is the existing driveway. We modify the geometry just a little bit as you start to take the corner and get a little bit further interior to the property. More just to kind of straighten it out and make it a bit of a cleaner entrance and to accommodate some stormwater features. Primary operational pieces are located to the rear of the building, kind of below, if you will. This is all high, and it's all that rock ledge face up and back. This is particularly the highest portion of it. So the operations are kind of tucked back here and buried, if you will, behind that ledge wall and behind the building. So pretty substantially screened from the most visible part, which would be the front here. And even that, there's a lot of existing kind of mature vegetation in here. It's pretty substantial. We're not touching any of that. Stormwater, we have this here is a sand filter basin. There's some shallow ledge in here. So, and we confirmed that subsequent to our previous discussion. So this is functioning as we expected. We did some test pits here, found shallow ledge. So we're doing a surface sand filter basin in here. These two larger basins are your more conventional surface infiltration basins. And then we have a supplemental series of chambers under the parking lot here that's handling stormwater. We had some preliminary discussions with DES regarding the alteration of terrain permits. We designed this in consideration of their initial consultation, and we're wrapping up the AOT application now and we'll be submitting that shortly to DES. Wanted to make sure everything was as we hoped and expected here first before completing that application. Utilities, this site's actually serviced by Pennachuck Water. We've done flow testing and feel that in Pennachuck concurred based on the result of that testing. We have sufficient flow and pressure. We may need a fire booster pump in the building. We're working through that right now as part of the mechanical design of the building. Sanitary, I spoke with Mr. Fox from DPW. Sanitary is going to run down this driveway, connect into the manhole, which is located thereabouts in the island. Then it kind of runs cross-country and down to the treatment plant, which is off the screen up and to the left. But as far as we've been told, sufficient capacity in the existing infrastructure and at the plant. We will be filing with the town and subsequently DES for the sewer connection permit as well. But our initial discussions with your Department of Public Works have been favorable and no impediment to connectivity there. And then the requisite utilities will also be brought up this driveway to service the building. We have a number, you can see we even went with the fall motif here for your landscape coloring. We have a number of new trees that we're including along the frontage kind of to enhance that existing buffer. And then we are requesting a waiver for interior parking lot landscaping, but feel as though we've met the spirit and intent of that with a number of different landscape islands. With a parking lot configuration like this, that requirement, at least in my interpretation, is customarily lends itself to more of those longitudinal islands that run up and down in shopping centers. This particular arrangement would make this parking lot substantially have a larger footprint if we were to incorporate that. So we feel with the screening that exists, as well as the landscape islands that we've incorporated in regular intervals, so at the parking lot, we've met the spirit and intent of that requirement. And we can get into the waivers whenever the board pleases.
Once we come to that.
Sure. That's the high level stuff, and I really restrained myself in the stormwater, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Just give a brief idea of what the traffic pattern is out of here.
Good point. So this, I don't have the aerial exhibit in here. Let me see if I can navigate. Yeah, there we go. So traffic uses Robert Milligan Parkway, which is a local road. That goes out to Daniel Webster Highway. People are probably familiar. That section of Daniel Webster Highway, and particularly the intersection with Industrial Drive, it's overbuilt, frankly. There's a tremendous amount of capacity in there. We submitted an initial traffic memorandum as part of this application that was accepted. The methodology and the study area was concurred with by the peer review consultant. The traffic engineer, having gotten that concurrence, is in the process of finishing up the more formal traffic impact analysis, which we will be submitting shortly and with the peer review comments having been addressed in our plan set. But a pretty substantial intersection out there that we don't believe, and the traffic engineer doesn't believe, is going to have impact on, frankly, because of how well constructed and overbuilt that corridor really is.
Yep.
Based on that initial information that was submitted by the applicant, I would say it's probably close to 90 to 95% of the traffic here is out to DW, over to industrial, and right onto the turnpike. There should be very few, if many at all, trips that go either north or south on DW other than going to Industrial Drive.
Yeah, that's what kind of lends itself to this use. It's a pretty conducive, the location of this property, because most of that traffic, it's almost an offshoot of the highway. So it's almost exit ramp Robert Milligan site, so there's not a lot of interfacing with any of the, kind of the ancillary roads.
And the only other thing I was wondering if you could update the board if there's been any further progress regarding the fire department request for access to the turnpike?
Continuing to work with DOT on that. Our initial discussions with them, they've been receptive. As you heard as part of the prior discussion, DOT has a little bit of staffing shortage right now, so getting some of those resources allocated to specific decisions like that have been a little bit tricky, so we're kind of giving them their space, but our initial discussions were favorable and they seem receptive to it. That this is being a bit presumptuous, but there was a condition in there recommending the board's approval conditional upon that driveway and confirmation from DOT being provided. Getting a little bit ahead of myself, but there was talk about that driveway being kind of here, if you will, in the back corner of the property. What we're working with DOT is to try and position it a little bit further north, and that was kind of their high-level review as well. We're trying to prevent a lot of traffic, including truck traffic. This site's been designed to get truck circulation around the perimeter and remain on the perimeter, of not inviting all that traffic, particularly emergency vehicles, having to navigate this interior parking area. So more likely that we'd put that driveway kind of north or along this main entrance to facilitate that. What I'd ask, if the board did accept the application, well, it's been accepted, if you conditionally approve the application this evening, perhaps we modify that language a bit to be at a location suitable to DOT and the applicant, just so flexibility in there.
Don't know if you, are you talking about the general condition, number 10 on page 4? Because I know there was the letter that came from the fire marshal, which I reworded in my recommended conditions to make it a general condition, meaning it was not something that would be required before the plan is signed. And I also added in bold italics, if permitted by NHDOT.
Which, and I expect that was your handiwork.
Yes.
The only language, I'm not taking issue with it necessarily, but to be a bit refined, the first sentence says a gated emergency access road running from the furthest southwest
Sure.
corner of the property. So the southwest corner is the one I'm referring to.
Okay.
I think, I just want some flexibility in that because I don't know specifically.
As a general condition, it's, I think it's the if permitted by DOT covers it, but if the board prefers,
Yeah.
we can modify that when we get to
I'm comfortable providing the board, as long as we understand that there's
That's-
some implicit
my
flexibility.
understanding and my recommendation to the board with the way that was written was to leave as much of the fire marshal's language as intact as possible, but caveating that, but it's dependent upon DOT's approval.
Yep, and provided the board will recognize there's some flexibility in that it's probably not going to be the southwest corner.
That's fine.
As long as, yeah, I'm fine. I've talked to Captain Manueli about this number of occasions, and he and I are very much aligned in terms of what we're pursuing.
I think
That's
that's
good to
gonna
know.
make sense to DOT.
Yeah.
And to Manuel.
And I think DOT, based on our high-level conversations,
Right.
feels that way. They have to go through,
And I
Some
think
procedure.
we're covered based on the conditions.
and acknowledging that there's one over by the high school, too. The high school has a similar access right
Yep.
now, so
Correct.
that's
Right.
kind of the precedent we're all reviewing together.
If, when we get to this point, I've already modified that I'll be changing, if you conditionally approve this, to state that gated emergency access road from the property to the northbound lane shall be required if permitted by DOT.
Thank you, sir.
It just basically takes out any language referring to the southwest corner of the
It
property.
moves it northbound.
Basically saying an
Makes sense.
access road from the property to the DOT.
Okay,
Thank you, Tim.
makes sense.
Anything further, Mr. Turner?
I think that's the high level. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much.
The one thing I would bring up, looking at the waiver requests that came in, the third bullet down on driveways, I would ask the board if you feel like that is necessary because you're utilizing an existing driveway. There's not a new driveway being proposed, so if it were my call, I would say that that particular requirement is not applicable, given that it's an existing driveway.
Tim, which one are you,
Yeah,
I'm talking about in the email that Casey printed out and left by your,
all right, sorry.
it's the third bullet down, 308C4 driveways. Because it's an existing driveway, I don't believe you necessarily need to grant the waiver for that. I think
Okay.
it's, we're not creating anything new that would be subject to that requirement, from my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, the internal parking lot landscaping, the building design, and the storm drain system, those others would still apply.
And we put in a special request from Mr. Disco regarding the location of 15-inch trees. We're requesting your favorite waiver on the 15-inch trees as well.
Where are they?
So the property technically, if you can see, has a number of existing mature trees around the outside. We're not proposing to touch those, but they physically exist on the property.
Yeah,
If I'm not touching them, I don't see the requisite to locate them, but
Yeah, again, if it was an area to be modified and cut, I'd want to know where the trees were in there, but.
I'd agree.
okay, I think, well,
Any questions?
oh, yeah, I wanted to go back. Huh?
Of course.
Yeah. I
Tell
just
us what
wanted-
you got, Mr. Disco.
The last discussion we had, we talked about stepping of the ledge and fencing of it. I see the fence is on there, but I don't see the stepping that you referred to, or at least I understood what you said was that the ledge would be stepped. That facade there. And I don't know if that's still your intention or if I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, Eli Long. Some of it's already stepped, and we have plans drawn up by our geotechnical engineer to basically cant the face back
Yeah.
to make it safe. And we've got a 20-foot fall area underneath there to prevent anybody from going underneath the rock face to protect them from rock
But
fall.
that doesn't show on the current plans that I have.
no, we haven't put in, we're not physically touching that area except for the work that Eli mentioned, some kind of additional peeling back. We can include that with the updated plans if you'd like for the board. It's the geotech, it's kind of an ultra detailed geotechnical item. What Eli mentioned, you can see on here is this face right here. This is kind of that big, broad, vertical face
Yes.
of the wall. We are substantially inboard, perhaps even more than 20 feet inboard, and the outside of the driveway includes fencing, and then the top of that face also includes the fencing. One, to prevent public access to the top, and two, to prevent it from, any rock that might come down. There is some work that's gonna be doing just to kind of reinforce that face, if you will. It doesn't include a substantial amount of earthwork to go step the whole thing and then bring it back up. There's gonna be more of a peel back, if you will, on the face. That information we can put on the plans for you. We'd be happy
Well,
to
I
do
think
that.
it should be on the plan. If it's part of the plan, I guess that's,
Certainly. It's still a work in progress, but we can include it as we are incorporating the finishing the peer review comments, so that the final set that the board ultimately approves and gets recorded will have that information on it.
yeah, okay, well, I don't know if we'll get to see it, but whatever.
Is that it, Mr. Disco?
I think that's it for now.
Ms. Healy, you had a question?
Actually, I have a couple,
Please.
if I can beg your indulgence. Tim, why is this an economic development priority?
This
This
parcel was
particular-
identified in the 2013 master plan as one of the key undeveloped potential economic development sites in town. And as such, it's just always been identified as a priority for some sort of large industrial development to take place.
Okay, thank you. So you talked a little bit about the landscaping in the front of the building. As you know, you can see that building. You can see everything in there right now, and you're saying you're gonna leave the landscaping or whatever is there for scrub pine, you're gonna leave it there now. So are you planning any other landscaping on on that part of the building that faces the ET? And what is the front of that building gonna look like?
ET being Everett Turnpike, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I've just never heard it called that before.
We just,
Yeah.
live with it.
We're
so.
ad-libbing. No, so this vegetation here, all those trees, and I agree, you can see in there. This vegetation that's here along the highway, we're not touching. Some of that's pretty mature, some of that's, as we've referred to, scrub pine. It's a mix of
So it's
things.
15 inches.
Yes, which we're asking for a waiver from. Yeah. Every time I come here, I'm requesting a waiver, even if I don't need it. Just a 15-inch one. So we are here as well. You can see kind of these colored tops in here. We're including a mix of maple, oak, some of that's going to be pine, white pine. The landscaping plan has a number of, you can see the details in there. And then that also includes landscaping kind of up against the building as well, in those islands we've incorporated. So you're going to see the building, of course, right? We are including landscaping to kind of enhance, if you will, that under canopy buffer. I did show, I have to go find, I think it's a smiley face. Yeah, there it is. Let me see, I thought I had in here, last time I was here, yep, I do. That's that one, and then, yeah, so this was, and this actually made the union leader, so. That's just kind of the architect's rendering of what the building's like. That's gonna be refined,
Okay.
obviously, but that's you're standing, so where you are right there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. Forgive me, my prowess of the Mac is my iPhone. We're standing right about here
Yeah,
when you're looking at the building. So that gives you the kind of that corner view.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
One of the reasons why, in the initial review, I supported the internal parking lot landscaping waiver was because of the additional trees that were gonna be around the perimeter facing the turnpike.
Mr. Disco, you have any
Yeah,
more questions?
that brings up another subject that we did talk a little bit about last time. That is the unbroken facade, the size of the building versus breaking the facade for appearances, because this is so visible from the highway and so on. And I thought it was gonna be some more look at that.
I think what we talked about, if my memory serves, is we had we're requesting a waiver from that
Yes,
requirement, given
yeah.
the nature of the use and kind of how it's positioned on the property. And that it's closest to butter as we've affectionately termed it, the ET.
I had erroneously stated that that wasn't applicable to this site. It actually is, so they have now submitted the waiver request for that requirement.
Rather than conform to it, they want a waiver. Right? Is that?
Given the nature of the building and the type of use, I think they can answer more from the functional standpoint, but typically when you're doing this type of warehouse distribution, the architectural jogs don't really work themselves well with the functionality of the building, but I'll certainly let them answer that specifically.
You know what, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously it's a 324,000 square foot building. It's fairly long.
Yeah,
I can appreciate that requirement. I don't know that.
that's
in
what
this-
requirements there.
Yeah, well, I think in this particular instance, given the nature of the use and that it could be multiple tenants, it could be one tenant, I think it'd be difficult to incorporate that and have the building maintain some of that flexibility. And the nature of the use, where the building is nearly 1,000 feet long, it presents some challenges, which is why we've tried to position it so it faces the turnpike. It also has a lot of vegetation in front of it to kind of break that up. We're using the landscaping to kind of create that separation, if we can, with the building and try and screen that to the extent that you can screen this particular building or buffer it, if you will, from the road, from the highway. I know it doesn't necessarily change your mind, but
I
that's
hear what you're
the
saying.
request, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I hear what you're saying, Nelson. It's,
yeah. I
from
mean,
my opinion, it's a highly visible building.
It's a highly visible
Especially
building
from the
right
highway.
in our front yard,
Yeah.
right?
Just as you're coming in.
Any other questions for the applicant? None? I think we haven't had a public hearing on this one yet, have we?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
before
don't
we
know.
attack the waivers.
Yeah.
I'd like to open up the public hearing. Any members of the public that would like to step forward and speak about this? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Now, board members, which memos, since this application was accepted as complete back in August, which waivers would you like to attack first?
Just to outline my understanding, if the board is agreeing with me that the driveway waiver is not required?
Correct.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we are looking for waivers for the internal parking lot
Yep,
landscaping,
311 I1.
yep, the building design,
Yep, 312
the,
D2
the
II.
s- the renderings, the 15-inch trees, and then if you could just give a quick explanation, Austin, on the drainage waiver?
Okay, yeah. So that is item 307A1, I believe. And what we're asking here, so this goes back to our last discussion, but this property has been in this use for a very, very long time, which includes this paved access driveway that provided access to the interior of the property from Robert Milligan. It's been as far as we can tell, and as far as our conversations with DES would suggest, this property has been in this use or some form of it, and that driveway existing prior to the state having the site-specific permit program, which subsequently became the alteration of terrain permit program. And as such, DES asked us to model the property in its undeveloped condition. So essentially, we're modeling it as a wooded property for the stormwater. Well, that's fine in consideration of them not having that program in place. What it doesn't account for is this driveway's been in place for decades. It's an existing condition that predates this project being proposed. This driveway, right about where my cursor is, pitches down to Robert Milligan Parkway. And it's a very, very narrow strip of property you can see, right? It doesn't leave much room in the way of stormwater. So our drainage analysis, based on DES's requirements, assumes that this driveway does not exist, that it's a wooded area. But the driveway does exist, and the runoff associated with it does exist. So I can't take credit for it having existed, at least as far as DES is concerned.
So just to basically explain it from my understanding is, for DES's purposes, this would be an increase in runoff. In actuality, it's not because it already exists.
It's the same. It's the same. It's kind of like, it's like the Matrix, right? So this driveway exists. If I'm going strictly by your standards, the driveway exists, and I would model it, and the net going to this driveway would be 0 because it exists. I'm not changing it. I gave you the drain report, which is admittedly conservative because I modeled the entire existing condition as woods, not an open gravel pit.
So ultimately, if this was modeled based on existing condition, this waiver would not be required because it would comply with our requirements. But it's because of the DES requirement to model this based on the pre-development, pre-excavation condition, that's where we end up in this situation. So I think it's a reasonable waiver request for that. I would just ask that the board note in your motion on that particular waiver, which I would suggest do separately because of that, is basically to note that in your motion that it's because of the requirements of NHDES's alteration of terrain that this indicates in the report an increase of runoff where one actually does not exist because of the existing condition.
It's a good point because it's not precedent setting in the sense that somebody could come back and say, I want this waiver. It's a very unique condition where this property has been around so long and been operating like this so long, and that driveway has existed so long, it predates some of the state programs. So it's unique in that regard. And I could have produced a drainage report that was different for you and different for the state, but that didn't seem, it seemed kind of more confusing than it would have been otherwise. So despite the fact of how confusing that situation might be, it's,
Understand.
yeah.
That's why I wanted to have that explanation.
course.
Because I understood what you were going for, but I just want to make sure the board understood. We're not authorizing any actual increase in runoff here. It's just because of the way DES is making them model it for AOT.
Okay, so
So if we did just a drainage report based on its existing condition as today's gravel pit, there would be no increase in runoff as a result of that in that location because that is an existing condition that's not being modified.
but at the end of the day,
Yep.
we're able to handle the driveway as is or as
Yeah.
will be
Correct.
with the
With no
new
change to the
development
drainage.
going on.
Yes, sir. And in fact, to try and accommodate it, there's no way to capture it today, and it's existing tonight. If it rained, the water goes down that driveway and just sheets off
Yeah.
into the road, right? We've actually
You're
put
capturing it.
we put a vegetated swale on the side of the road to try and slow it down, allow
Yeah.
it to kind of meander through and maybe even infiltrate to it to the extent that it can. So it's an improvement, but it's not changing how the site functions hydraulically.
Yeah. Okay, it's not changing the site hydraulically.
No. Nope, and we've got some pretty substantial stormwater infrastructure interior to the property to handle all of our improvements.
Yeah, what's going- Whoops.
Pause for a second, Austin. We want to get a power cord on that laptop before it dies.
Yep. No problem.
Sorry, Tim, do you have I didn't have the memo that Casey put out on the table for the extra,
Oh,
yeah,
I've got
if you have one. Thank you.
So just again to summarize, the waivers we'd be looking for are the internal parking lot landscaping, building design standards, building renderings, 15-inch trees, and the drainage. And I think
And we're getting rid of the driveways. 'cause
the
we-
driveway, I think the board has all
Agreed.
agreed that that's not applicable.
I think we need some wording for that drainage system. How would we?
If you want to handle that one first, let me
Let's
just make
do
my note.
that.
I would suggest that the motion to grant the waiver to section 307A1 be stated that it is due to specific circumstances, and further that that specific circumstance is that this request is purely due to the requirements of NHDES for the modeling of the site pre-development for the purposes of the AOT. So moved?
I will so move that.
So moved by Ms. Christensen. Do I hear a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Mr. Disco. All in favor of the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That's a 5-0-0 to approve the stormwater drainage. One down. Which one would we like to get at next?
If the board is comfortable, unless you feel like you need to separate any of the other ones, I think you could do the rest in one motion if you
Yeah.
chose.
I,
Are there any
Unless you
members
want to
opposed
take,
to
I'm,
that?
I'm gonna guess that the building design standards might need to come out separately.
I think I'd agree with you on that one, Tim.
well, yeah, I'm not ready to agree to the waiver of building design standards. And, also I'd like to see the rendering, so, and,
Didn't we
Yeah, I don't
provide
mind
the
the
rendering
trees.
though, right? I guess maybe it's, I think it said from all angles, perhaps that's the key language there.
Yeah, they're not in the current set. And
I think we submitted this as part of the package.
that is a part of the package, but it's not part of the plan set, which is what the requirement is. So if you put the renderings for the front, side, and rear in the plan set, then waiver is not needed.
So, okay, I can, how about, just, this is more, just me clarifying. These don't this doesn't qualify as a rendering, correct? I guess it does.
That's an elevation. That would qualify for the requirement for an elevation.
I can put that in the plan set and eliminate the, okay.
Yeah, so we can get rid of
Yeah.
4.15.
We just package it separately, but I can put it in
Yep.
as a reference, okay.
That's fine.
Did you hear that, Nelson? He's gonna pull that waiver request for 4.15. Who will put the renderings in the new plan
renderings
set.
will be part of the plan set. So now the only building design requirement that the waiver is requested for is the facades and the jogs.
yeah, and
And the 15.
I would expect the renderings would be a little different with the, if we
If you deny the
If
waiver,
we
then
deny the
yes.
first one, so we should handle the first one first, right?
The other one, regardless of which way you vote, they're gonna put renderings in the set, so you don't need to act on 4.15.
Right, okay. But we do need to act on.
312D22.
Do I, okay.
Do we hear a
okay.
motion on that, Nelson?
Well, I'll move not to grant a waiver for
You
that.
don't need to do that, you just don't
Well,
grant
I
it.
didn't think so, but Mr. McLaughlin is looking
Unless
for
you wanna make a
one.
motion to deny the waiver for,
I move we deny the waiver request. I guess if a motion is required, my motion would be to deny the waiver request.
For 312D2II.
Yeah.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Healy. All in favor to deny that waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? One. Abstaining, none. So that is 4-1-0 to deny the waiver of 312D2II. And we only have one left.
nope, you have
They pulled one, and we,
the drainage, you still have the
Did I-
internal parking lot landscaping, which is not in Casey's because it was part of the original.
oh, Tim,
So we've got,
you throw curveballs.
you've got, excuse me, I'll go through this. 311L1 for internal parking lots landscaping, and then 412C18
Correct.
8
Yes.
for the remaining. So if you want to do those in single motion, I
Yeah,
think we can do
okay.
that.
Any discussion on those two remaining waivers?
What's the second
I'm not clear on them.
The first one is for the internal parking lot landscaping, because they've included the additional perimeter landscaping around the parking lot.
Okay,
The next one would be for the trees greater than 15 inches in diameter.
Okay. Okay. I will move that we grant a waiver to the parking lot requirement for the trees in the parking lot.
For both waivers, both 311L1
Yeah.
and 412C18.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Motion by Mr. Disco, seconded by Ms. Christensen. Do I hear any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. That's 500 to approve both of those waivers. That should do it for the waivers. Do we have any more discussion on this topic, members? Ms. Healy, please.
The only thing I would note is to get concurrence from the board on the change to proposed general and subsequent condition number 10, to remove the reference to the southwest corner regarding the emergency access to the Everett Turnpike. And then also, I would need to add that the applicant to revise the building design to meet the requirements of section 312D22.
Would you need to vote on that, or is it general consensus?
I just want, as long as the board's comfortable with those being added based on the denied waiver and the discussion we had earlier tonight.
Are any members opposed to that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, any lingering questions for the applicant? Ms. Healy, go ahead.
Question for Tim. Tim, they're coming perilously close to Bowers Pond. Is it, how close are you?
Not very, I don't think. How close are you?
I'm just
No,
looking at the picture.
Yep, so we are within the outer 250-foot shoreline designation,
Okay.
but we're
Only
not on-
because with your AOT, I think Bowers Pond is one of the major waterways in New Hampshire, which requires you to also file with them.
Yep, we're working on that separately with shoreline protection.
Okay,
Which,
thank you.
which your regulations actually just adopted the state standards, so we're,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question
Disco.
on that too. Some of your plans, this one doesn't, show Alpaul Lane extending all the way to this property. Paul Lane comes in off of Route 3 by another route and services a couple of other businesses. Is that road existing? Is that road,
It's paper right of way.
Mhm.
is there any pavement
No.
there? Is there a
The
gravel?
right of way exists, but there is no improved roadway in that section.
I see. Where does the approved roadway end? Do you know
I can
offhand?
show you right here, actually.
What? No idea.
He's got an aerial that you can,
Oh, okay.
So let's see. You can kind of see it here. So here's the driveway coming in here. You can see
Yeah,
it
that's
kind of
the driveway.
traversing, and then it stops right in here about.
I think we're talking about Alpaul Lane.
Oh, which is this right here. Oh, yeah. It's this right here, right? That runs along the
Yeah,
outside
that-
edge.
There's nothing.
There's nothing there. It's just in the woods. It's just a legacy right away.
Okay, I just wondered where the paved right-of-way ended. Does it come to your property? Up in the
No. Oh, no.
corner
Not
that
even
doesn't
No,
show
no, not
there?
even close. No. No, I think it was once upon a time some contemplated crossing of the highway or something that.
What? I didn't hear what you said.
No, I say you can see the geometry. I think it was some contemplated crossing of the highway at some point, long time ago, but it never was constructed. And I think, there's these two residences here. I think it terminates right about in here.
Oh, wait a minute. You're on the other side of the turnpike.
Yeah, the Alpaul Lane never crossed the highway. Never
Okay,
made it
but-
across.
But there's a part on that
It
side.
Right here.
to the
basically ends
east.
at Nashua Fishing Game.
What?
It ends at Nashua Fishing Game,
Okay,
which is,
which is the next property to
Correct.
this.
so I'll walk over here. I just pulled up Google Maps on my phone.
Hmm.
So the improved portion of Alpaul ends at Nashua Fishing Game here,
Uh-huh.
and then there's the excavated portion here, so it's on the other side of this little pond on the other side of, so.
There's a pond in between, huh?
So if you look at Alpaul Lane, it basically ends
Yes.
here.
Okay.
at the National Fishing Game site.
This is the National Fishing Game,
Correct.
this is their
Yep,
gun
and this is
range.
the corner
And
of this
here's,
property.
here's this little dotted,
Yep, that's the legacy right-of-way with nothing in it.
yeah, okay. All right, just wanted to be clear on that.
Thank you, Tim. Board members, do we have any more questions? Are we ready to take action on this item?
Well, I'd like to see what it looks like.
So you would like to see renderings and all that
Yeah,
before we take
yeah.
action? I agree. So then we'd be looking for continuance.
May I make a suggestion that we grant conditional approval and add a precedent condition that a compliance hearing be held at some point when the renderings are complete before final signing of the plan, rather than hold up conditional approval here tonight?
Sounds reasonable.
Board
I'd be
members.
okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Do we hear a motion? as
I will
to-
add that, assuming whoever makes the motion. I'll
So
add that to-
moved, what Tim said.
So moved, what Tim said by Ms. Healy, seconded by Ms. Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That's 500.
So
To
is
grant
Barbara
final
and Lynn?
conditional approval.
Barbara and Lynn for the motion,
Yes.
one second, thank you.
Mr. Turner, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That brings us to item 7 on our agenda for tonight. That is, Maddie, you'll have to excuse me if I,
Schwery.
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 Thank you, Tim. You saw where I was going with that. Matty Schwery and 480 DW Highway Schwery Realty is the owner. Review for consideration of final approval for a waiver of full site plan review to allow for a previously approved but expired site plan under the former regulations to utilize an existing structure for a restaurant located at 480 DW Highway in the C1 Limited Commercial Elderly and Town Center Overlay and Aquifer Conservation Districts. Tax map 5D-3, lot 046, case Planning Board 2021-34.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in an effort to try to expedite this, because it is relatively straightforward, if you recall, back on August 3rd, Robert had presented to you the situation that happened with Mr. Schwery's site plan. Mr. Schwery's plan was originally approved as a waiver of full site plan by the planning board back in 2016, was signed by the board on March 1st of that year. And per state law, he has basically 5 years to complete the project in accordance with the approved plans. As you know, the town adopted new site plan regulations in 2019, and since Mr. Schwery has not completed the project, he now has, his original approval has since expired, and because he has not met the active and substantial development criteria from the state statute, he's now subject to the new regulations. The board did discuss this on August 3rd, and the consensus of the board was that you were comfortable with Mr. Schwery coming in with the exact same plan and requesting that it be reinstated under the requirements and the approval that was made back in 2015 and 2016. Robert's memo to you dated August 31st basically outlines that, and our recommendation, if the board still feels comfortable with this, would be to simply vote after opening a public hearing to allow that the plan from 2016 be reinstated and move forward with that moving forward, to allow him to continue with the project now that he has secured this financing necessary to move forward with the project.
Thank you, Tim. With that being said, would the applicant like to say anything, or would you rather us just go right to the public hearing?
Has nothing changed.
Gotcha.
Now we get the finance this way.
That's very good. So, I'd like to, open up the public hearing. If there are any members of the public that'd like to step forward, say anything on this item. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Any board members have any questions for either Tim or the applicant? Mr. Disco.
I just have one thing. In reviewing the plan, which was submitted with our package, I noted that there were a couple of notes on the plan that say a variance is required. And I just wanted to be sure that Mr. Schwery understood that. Apparently, I don't know if he's gone and gotten the variances already, or,
Curious where this note is.
I'll tell you,
There was a special exception to allow the restaurant, which was granted.
pardon, what?
There was a special exception granted to allow the restaurant use on this property back in 2014.
Yes. And this plan was part of that approval.
And they also granted in 2015 the variance to allow the porch within 10 feet. So the variances are still there, and they were vested by the planning board granting the conditional and final approval to the project back in 2016. So those variances are still valid based on. There's no additional variances that are required at this stage.
Did he get the variances?
Yes.
Yes,
Tim.
those variances were granted.
You want to just turn on your mic?
Those variances were granted, the special exception
Okay.
was granted in 2014, and the variance was granted in 2015.
When you say the variance. was
The
two-
variance was to allow the applicant to enclose the porch 10 feet from the front property line.
Yeah. Then there was a concrete ramp setback and a retaining wall setback. It says variance required on the plan.
I will go back and look, but I believe, my recollection is that all the variances and zoning board relief that was required was done back in the 2016 timeframe.
We just wanted to be sure that
absolutely.
Mr. Schwery was aware of those things, and if,
It's my understanding.
He's got
again,
another-
It's been 5+ years, but
Yep.
Yeah.
he was already into the property when work stopped. So he had signed plans and he had already started doing some of this work,
Yeah.
so.
okay, maybe he's okay. I
Yes.
just asked a
Yep.
question.
Absolutely, no problem.
Yeah.
Ms. Christensen, please.
I'll make a motion that we
We haven't opened to the public yet. We have to.
We did.
Oh, we
We
did?
just did.
Okay,
We
sorry.
did.
I missed that. My
reinstate
apologies.
the waiver of full site plan that was originally approved by the planning board on March 1st, 2016, with no changes to that approval being made. Following general and subsequent conditions of approval placed on the original approval as noted in planning board's decision letter dated September 17th, 2015 shall apply.
Motion made by Ms. Christensen. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Von Schoen. Schoen. I always get that wrong.
Auf Deutsch.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That's 5-0-0 to reinstate your plans.
Yes.
Good luck.
You are all set.
Thank you very much.
No
Appreciate
problem.
it.
Good luck.
Just, there is no, it's not a conditional approval. This is actually simply saying that the plan that was expired is
Correct.
now valid for another period of time. So we'll get you that letter out tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Deals with item 7. On to item 8. Governor's Hill Corporation, review for consideration of an amendment to a previously approved subdivision plan to consolidate 13 lots into 5 reconfigured lots. The parcels are located on Clare, Level, Louis, and Robert Streets, and Acre Lane in the R4 Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts. Tax map 6D, lots 065, 075 to 079, 081, 124, and 125. And tax map 7D, lots 057, 058, 062, and 063. Case Planning Board number 2021-35. Tim, do you have anything to say on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For those who aren't familiar, these
yeah, there's
lots
a
are
lot of
part
wetland
of the
in here.
old
That's
Level
why it never
Acres
got
subdivision, which was approved back in 1970. Majority of the lots in that development were never constructed because of the presence of a rather large wetland in the middle of that property. I can't remember off the top of my head. The previous owner has passed, and through various means, Governor's Hill Corporation is now the owner of the former lots from the development. They have been working with the Public Works and Community Development Department over the course of the last couple of years to build on those lots that already had the ability to be built without requiring relief or change from the planning or zoning boards. This is the first portion of the project that does require planning board approval. Matt will be able to give you much more detail on exactly how this works, but essentially you're taking 13 lots and portions of paper roadways that have never been constructed, consolidating and then redoing the lot lines, so those 13 lots will now become 5 lots with some additional public improvements to obtain the required frontage and access to those lots. They basically make these lots conforming to today's R4 standards, and I'll let Matt take it from here, but it's a convoluted way of saying we're going from 13 lots to 5 by consolidating and revamping some of these old layout into a design that meets today's requirement.
Thank you, Tim. If the applicant will please introduce themselves.
Good evening, Matt Peterson with Keach Nordstrom Associates, here representing Governor's Court for this proposed consolidation and re-subdivision. Sorry I don't have the computer screens today. I kind of forgot we're back to that now. I went back to the old boards here, but next time I'll have that there. Tim's gone through everything on this. It's as he just stated here. We've been working over the last year and a half or so. You've seen me in front of this board with a couple other applications that we've had to piece stuff together with Dawn and DPW and with planning staff as we move forward. As Tim said, the property is located off of Preston Road here. The wetland that he talked about is kind of right in the middle here. The lots, we were in front of you for Constant Street about a year ago. That's part of it here. Obviously, it was all supposed to kind of tie through. There's a grid lot of these are all just, they didn't back then care if there was wetlands or anything that was out there. They just gridded out a road and put it in. So what we're looking to do here today is really just admin stuff and cleaning up what we have out there. I will say, currently out there right now off Preston, there's a staging area for Continental that's working on some municipal stuff. I believe for the town of Bedford and for Merrimack as well, so that's kind of at the very beginning back in here. We have not built these roads in yet, obviously. Again, like Tim said, we're working with DPW, talking to the owner here. We'd like to do this probably next spring is what we're looking at to put these in. But what we have is the plan that you have in front of you, on sheet 1 of 4. I'm sure you guys have seen this here. We've got the old lot lines shown in the dash with the Z through them. And you can see how they're all, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3 up in this location, here's a 4th one down here, a 5th one over here, a 6th one in here, that all got combined, and then we re-subdivided into 1, 2, 3 lots. So again, it's just really cleaning up some legal things that we had out here as far as the lots and getting access to them. The other thing is the bulbs in the cul-de-sac. Dawn wanted us to work that in so that we had the area to be dedicated for those. Those were not on the 1970 plans. They were just straight shot roads through. Nobody really considered to do any of that. So this was the first one that shows the 3 lots where we're combining the 6. Then on the second cul-de-sac that we're going to bring in, we've got 2 lots here. Again, mostly wet on the second. We're combining that to get 1 lot. And then over in here, we've got these 4 lots that are being combined to get 1 buildable lot up in this location there. It's kind of a late night here. I know you guys have gone through a lot of stuff. I'll really take any comments or questions.
Water and sewer?
Butters that would like. Yes, obviously we have water and sewer on this project here. That's why, unlike the one I came for you guys a year ago where I didn't have sewer, I had asked for some waivers and stuff like that. This one we do have the water and sewer, and that's why it's the R4, as Tim had stated. That's kind of it. Open up for questions, comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Members of the board, anything for the applicant?
Question, with regard to the sewer, is any pumping required, or is this all gravity?
It is all gravity, right? Yeah, every plan I've seen so far, so gravity.
Okay, I just get that on the table. Otherwise,
We will need a motion for acceptance on this one.
Oh, that's correct, yes. Thank you, Tim. With Mr. Peterson going through that brief, do we hear a motion to accept the application as complete?
So moved.
second.
Moved by Ms. Healy, seconded by Mr. Disco. All in favor of the application being complete? Aye. Nelson?
Pardon?
Aye.
Oh, aye, yes.
Yes.
I seconded the motion.
Doesn't necessarily mean
That's right.
No, that's true.
That is
That's true.
5-0-0 to find
That's
the
absolutely
application
true.
complete. And I see you are requesting a waiver, unless that has been
They
retracted.
are, is that the sidewalk?
Correct, yes.
The board has the ability under section 4.07, because this is not technically a new subdivision, this is a lot line adjustment, that you can determine that the sidewalk requirement is not required per that section, because it's a minor lot line adjustment.
And I believe that's true.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
agree
I
with that,
agree with
Nelson?
that.
Okay, do we need a vote on that to
Nope,
determine?
nope,
It's just general
Your vote on the
consensus.
approval will be reflective of
Okay.
that.
That seemed pretty straightforward. Any other questions for the applicant?
I do, with regard to the plans that were submitted to us, there is some streets here, some of them are called unimproved, and then there's some that don't say that. It's hard to tell from the plans we got, where roads exist and where they don't. I mean paved roads.
Pretty easy for that one there, Nelson.
Okay.
There is nothing that exists up in there. Okay, the Constant Street and Cathy Street that we had shown there, that exists.
Yeah,
And then up on the Reed's Way, Ferry Way, those exist. Anything up in here does not exist at this point. And that's why what we had shown on our plans here, we've tried to make it as clear as possible. The level street will be the roads that are being built. The unimproved areas will be ones that will not be improved.
Let's start over, excuse me. Level Street is not built?
Correct, but it will be.
It
Nothing
will.
is built out, nothing is currently built out here for any of these roads to get to these lots.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's all being worked with Don and DPW.
Those that say unimproved will remain unimproved. Those that do not are going to be constructed as part of this project.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, that's not clear. How much new road is being built in these areas? It's hard to tell from these plans.
Well, this isn't road plans, that's why. So all that stuff is already existing and already approved. We're working with Don. There's no road designs, there's no profiles, there's no nothing. That's all stuff that's, these guys been working with DPW and building. This is strictly a subdivision and consolidation plan of those lots. So you're right, I did not show anything to do with roads. So you were not gonna find anything on that. You're not gonna understand exactly where they are in here unless you had seen the overall of this development.
The
building
reason
up.
for that, Nelson, is because the Level Acres subdivision is a vested subdivision from their original approval. So those approvals that show all of
All
these
that.
roads, even though they're never gonna get built, those plans are still valid from 1970.
Right.
So that's what governs where the road design and everything, it has to be worked out between town staff and the developer to make sure that we're making sure that they meet as much as possible today's standards within the confines of that vested development.
Yeah, that's a problem. It's hard for us to see where the roads are, where the frontages are of these lots, and,
This is kind of like what I did in Charles Way recently, where this is all in and you're going off what was approved based in 1970. My plans are not roadway plans, not this is consolidation of the lots and re-subdividing those just based on the lots, nothing to do, they've already got vested frontage on right-of-ways and roadways that are out there. So, I mean, I could get those full
You're
plans.
doing lot line adjustments.
It's essentially lot line adjustments and consolidation, yes.
Right.
but there's no, these other lots, there's lots that go on Level Street. You said Level Street wasn't constructed.
There are lots that are good on left, so you gotta take a step back, because can be extremely confusing. You have an original approval from the 1970s that has the full plan set of everything that's out there. Now you had somebody come along and just wants to reconfigure these 3 lots at the end of a cul-de-sac that's on those approved plans. That's all we're doing. There's lots throughout here that when they put in Level Street, they can go build a house on that. This is not part of this subdivision here. It's part of the 1970. This is only reconfiguring the lots from the previous subdivision. So there's a disconnect, I get it.
Yeah.
But that's why Don is working with them directly on the road, and why I even asked the question to them, where's the road profiles and that? And
Yeah.
no, there aren't any. So I had the same question, Nelson, I agree with you. But you gotta go back to the original ones on staff, that staff has, and that's where they're going.
It's because the determination was made years ago that this is a vested development.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I hear your confusion, but I can
Okay.
only give you what I can give you, Nelson, and this is what I got.
Okay.
And it meets all the requirements.
Mess.
Well,
Do I hear any other questions, or are we ready to entertain a motion?
Just one other caveat to this is that the undedication of the portions of these roads will actually end up having to go to the town council for approval before it's finalized.
Yeah.
you
No,
get-
correct, we do still have to go to the public meeting as well.
Yes.
What's that?
We do still have to do the public meeting. Are there any members of the public that wish to step forth and, miss, please? If you'd like to introduce yourself and then tell us what you have.
I'm Ashley, I live at 15 Page Drive, so I'm right on the
Last name
Thank
too,
you.
please,
Start
miss.
over.
Carden, Ashley Carden.
Address?
I'm at 15 Page Drive, so I'm right on the corner of Level. And so I just had a question. I understand that these plans are more to reconfigure the lots, but I guess I'm wondering, I know that the old plans were to pull Level Street all the way through. And so being right on the edge, and Acre Lane is right behind me, so I hear all that construction all the time, and I'm curious how you're gonna access these lots. Is that gonna be, like, is Level Road getting pulled all the way through? Because next to me is woods, wetland, behind me is Acre Lane, so I'm curious how that's gonna affect me, being a corner lot, if there's gonna be a street put in there.
Thank you.
So on page, for the board's purposes, on sheet 2, there's the corner of Level and Concord, where you can see the wetland actually goes into that portion of the Level Street right-of-way.
She's on the corner of Level and what?
Page.
Page.
It's
It's not the second.
this lot right here, 70/40.
Mr. Peterson, would you like to speak on that?
Get me on the right page.
You're on, yeah, you're on sheet
There.
2.
Nelson? Page
This is-
2.
This is page 2.
So where we are right now is we're down here, Claire,
70/40.
here's the acre we're talking about, here's Level
Okay, but
Road
there's
coming
no-
in, here's the
70,
wetland.
that's where she.
Mr. Peterson, if you could just grab the mic, sorry.
Here's Level, and this
Thank
is
you.
Constance then.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Where did Page Street come in?
All right, so coming in Level Street right here, as I said, here's our cul-de-sac coming down, here's the lots that we were combining for one, here's the ones we're combining here, here's the 6 we're combining over here. So this is where we're talking about the development, right in this location here. Level Road comes down to this point, sewer and water will be brought through the wetland here, but the road is not being brought through at that location there. So no, that is not being connected through there.
Okay, just behind, on Acre Lane?
Yes.
That will be,
Yes, this ties in back through here because these are the viable lots back in this location here. So everything in the middle here is all the wetland that they couldn't get. This is the stuff where it's not happening.
so Level Road will never go all the way through because of the wetlands.
Correct, right? Correct.
Which is why there's like taping all in the woods, like on a lot of my trees, there's a lot of.
Those are probably mapping of wetlands and stuff because to put the sewer in that, we had to map that first and then had to get state permits to be able to do that. And so there could be a lot of different flags out there. There could be offset flags, some stuff like that, but yes.
So I guess I'm wondering, and I don't have that.
Miss,
You need
if
to
you
be
could
at the
just,
mic.
yeah.
You can use the one at the desk, too.
Yeah.
Do I need to reintroduce myself?
No,
No?
you're
Good.
all set.
Okay, so I'm wondering, I guess, for 7D 63, 62, 57, and 58. I know those are ones that are being reconfigured.
Which numbers did you say again?
7D 63, 7D 62, 57, and 58, all 7D.
So yes, those are the lots that are being combined to create the one lot off of that that's there. So
And
those,
how will you access that one? Like which road, I guess, is what I want to know. Because to
That'll-
me, those would be down on Constance, but that doesn't even exist.
Right, so level road will be coming in off of Preston, and then turn right onto Claire, then turn right onto the other one there.
Two new cul-de-sacs for Claire and Acre that will come off of level.
Okay. Confusing, but we'll go with it. Hard to see it from that, but,
It was just, level's supposed to go through, it's not going through. But there's still a second portion of it over here that they'll access from there. So they're not accessing from your side because they can't get through the wet. So they'll be coming from the other side to access those lots.
Any other members of the public that wish to offer testimony? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Are there any other questions from the board members? Ms. Healy?
So do any of the reconfigured lots still have wetlands on them?
Yes.
Okay, so I am reading it correctly then. Okay. And you have enough buildable space without encroaching into the wetland?
So that was the biggest challenge we had. As you can see, you know, all these lots back here. Here's the wetland we have that comes around and then comes back up in here and comes back out in here. So this is the wetland we've been working with all lots. 1, 2, this one's completely wet. This one's about 50% wet. This one's about 50% wet. About 50% wet here. So yeah, we had to work with all of them to get the buildable areas that we could have for each of our lots set up for it there. So that's what we've submitted everything and gone through it as best we could. He would have loved me to get 8 or 9 out of them if I could have, so if there was any way, we would have.
Yeah. I'm good.
Is that all, Ms. Healy? Any other questions? If there are no questions, we can entertain a motion.
One question, who did the wetlands?
From my office, Josh Brown.
Okay, I don't see them, is he stamped on the?
It's
Oh,
right
yes,
here.
okay,
I thought I
my
saw it.
mistake,
See it.
it's
That's
there,
okay, no worries.
sorry.
Ms. Christensen?
I will move that we grant conditional final approval to the application with the precedent conditions to be filled within 6 months, and prior to plan signing, based on the staff recommendations in the memo.
We have a motion made by Ms. Christensen. Do I hear a second? Seconded by Ms. Von Schoen. I got it that
On
time.
shoulder.
Sure.
Schoen. I've never been corrected, and I've been saying his name wrong the whole time. And I don't know why he never said anything, but, okay. Tim, we don't have to mention specifically that the sidewalks or anything.
By approving this motion,
It
you
will
are
go
basically
through.
stating that 407 applies.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That's 5-0-0 to grant final conditional approval. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Have a good night, guys.
Almost there.
Oh, we're getting so close, Tim. Takes care of our last actual item. We are now on to item 9, possible discussion, possible action regarding other items of concern. And Tim, you did have stuff for us on here?
I do. In your packet, you should find a memo dated September 2nd from myself to the members of the board. This is a recommendation that is needed from the planning board to the town council to allow the authorization for a building permit on a road, on a lot without frontage on a class 5 or better road. This is for the lot that is known as 312 Babusick Lake Road. This parcel was before the zoning board of adjustment week or so ago, received a variance to allow the reconstruction of a home that has been on the site since the 1960s to be demolished and reconstructed within the side setback. However, because this lot was recently modified through a voluntary merger, 2 lots that were out there have been combined into one. The issuance of a building permit for the renovated and new construction requires the authorization of the town council to allow that building permit to take place where you don't have frontage on a town-maintained roadway. Typically, in these situations, these come forth in a project that's in front of the planning board for approval. However, in this case, it's a lot that has these two lots have been, existed separately for a long time. As I mentioned, the home itself dates back to 1969, so there has been access to this property through a private drive known as Gooter Lane that goes from Babusick Lake Road out to the parcel that is right on the lakefront. So what I'm asking for the board here tonight is to consider that, given the fact that this property has long had access from Babusick Lake Road, that's not really being modified in any way. We have copies of all the easements that allow the access to be obtained for this parcel. So my recommendation from the board is that you vote to recommend that the town council authorize a building permit for the property, subject to the requirement that they provide the required waiver of municipal liability per the statutory requirements, which would be taking place and done at the council level when this goes before the council on September 23rd.
And I will so move.
Thank you, Tim. So moved by Lynn.
Yes.
Do I have a second or any discussion?
I have questions. I'm trying to understand this plan and which lots we're talking about here.
The lots we're talking about are the two that are somewhat highlighted in yellow. They were previously separate lots. They were recently, I think last month, granted a voluntary merger by the planning board that was signed by Bob and Paul to merge the two lots because they are both owned by the same entity now.
And how do I identify those?
Those are map, I don't have the specific, I have to zoom in and my eyesight's not great, but
Oh, I
it's
got,
I may be.
5A2-159 and 5A2-159-1.
This one here and this one.
well, wait a minute. I can only take input from one side.
Never
Sorry.
mind.
Thanks, Lynn, but
They're highlighted there in yellow.
there's two lots highlighted in yellow.
Which
And
are
we
now
merged
one
those.
lot.
And what's this other little lot that's sort of cut out of the two? There's a lot that's 6A2-159.
That's now part of that, all the same lot.
Oh, that's also yellow.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So now I've got three lots.
There's not three lots, it's two lots.
So they're
There's-
both somewhat oddly shaped to
Yes.
begin with, the both two lots.
Because of
Okay.
all the different easement lines, it may look like there are three lots, but there were only two.
Yeah.
It's now one lot. All that hatching and different lines are for the access easement that allows for the access to the property.
Okay.
And again, we're basically just allowing them to continue the access that they've had to this lot since 1969. But we're
With a-
formalizing it, and the town will now have the waiver of municipal liability, which did not exist back in
Yeah.
those days.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take your word for it.
You're welcome.
So there's currently a motion on the table made by Ms. Christensen. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Healy. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. That's a 5-0-0 to send that
We'll see you in a couple
recommendation
weeks at the council.
to the town council.
Sorry to have you wait, but it made sense in case they had questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, was that the one and only item of discussion?
The only other thing I had was just a welcome to my new part-time secretary, Stephanie Bryn, who started today, replacing Sharon Haynes, who was transferred up to general government a couple of months ago. So I am back to full staff again.
Good.
And we're glad to have her.
That is very good. I'm sure she will be successful. That does it for item 9. On to item 10, approval of the minutes of August 17th. Do I
So
hear any
moved
motions?
as presented.
So moved as
Second.
presented by Ms. Christensen, seconded by Mr. Disco.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
All opposed? All abstaining?
Abstain.
So 203.
So 203 to approve of those minutes. That's an odd vote. Okay, that's item number 10. On to item number 11, adjournment. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Healy.
Let Jamie do it.
It'll give me one more shot. Seconded by Ms. Von Schoen.
Von Schoen.
For a year, I've been saying it wrong. That's why I can't do it now.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? 5-0-0 to adjourn. Thank you very much. Please do not
Jamie?
forget to turn your microphones off.
Meet me at my car. I've got helmets.